Good day to all retailers and our friends in the allied industry. This is CJ Hassan of the Shangri Plaza. Welcome again to Let's Talk Retail, the multi-awarded Philippine Retailers Association podcast. Our guest today is a well-rounded leader who have managed diverse and multicultural teams throughout his career in the F&B industry. So we have another F&B expert, for our guest today. We'll talk about his experience working with different F&B brands and how it helped hone his leadership skills. He also helped him become innovative, especially during challenging times. We also talk about how to establish brand loyalty in the companies he has worked with. He will also deal with multi-generational, my favorite questions, multi-generational teams, diverse teams. So it's a lot of inclusion, a lot of diversity discussions. But before we move to talking to our guest today, please remember, subscribe, click that button, and subscribe to Let's Talk Retail in the Philippine Retailers Association YouTube channel. We are also on Spotify. So you can also get your dose of Let's Talk Retail on Spotify. Now, let's get to our thought-provoking session. He has 20 years of experience. It's an arsenal in the F&B industry, worked for multiple countries across the globe. He worked with Tim Hortons in Canada as an operations manager, so that's 595 restaurants across it. It is a mix of franchise and company-owned restaurants. Then he came to the Philippines and opened the Tim Hortons. After 11 years of working with Tim Hortons, he then shifted gears to work in private equity and with a group called Paramount. And Paramount is into casual dining. That's most of their holdings. And he was the director of operations global. Now, with that opportunity, he moved on to another challenge, and this time to open Popeyes in the Philippines, a COO and general manager. And we know how Popeyes has been expanding the past few years. Recently, he's been given an award. So congratulations to our guest. He's one of Asia's leaders, top 50 rising tigers in Asia Pacific, just in time for the Year of the Tiger. And I just found out that aside from being the president of the Dominos Pizza in the Philippines, he is a member of the board. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome a friend of the Philippine Retailers Association, Rami Chahwan. Rami.
Good morning, CJ. Thanks for that marvelous introduction.
Thank you. Very impressive credentials. I was reading about you. Very interesting. I'd like our audience I want you to share to their audience your learning. So let's start off with your journey. You were born in Lebanon, war-stricken Lebanon, but you made a journey across the Atlantic, the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. Can you tell us about that journey?
Absolutely. Actually, I still remember it very clearly. And I have to say I was very fortunate because during that period, I was born in 1980, as you've mentioned, in Lebanon, and it was torn. It was a civil war. And my parents did what every parent had to do, basically. And I have to say, we didn't feel anything. We never ran out of food. Yes, we had some electricity burnouts and then a few brownouts here and there, and school was interrupted here and there. But besides that, I mean, all your necessary um, for living, we had them. So we never had an issue. We never felt it. The big change happened that we had to leave the country. For one simple reason, my dad is adamant about education and it's a priority for him. And during that time, schools were out in Lebanon. So we went to Cyprus, 40 kilometers away from the shore of Lebanon, expecting to be there for 6 months only. And then we would return. And from there, we ended up migrating to Canada completely. And this is where I grew up, actually. I arrived in Canada at a very young age. I went through all my education in Canada. Um, the tough part was to integrate and learn a new language, I would say, from Arab speaking to French speaking to English speaking. But today I treasure those. I'm pretty flexible when I travel, so it's kind of something that I would keep with me for the rest of my life. And again, I have to thank my parents for that. We never ran out of anything. During all that time, uh, they probably sacrificed more than they would ever admit to make sure that me, my brother, and my sister ran out of nothing.
In that portion of your life, what was the two greatest learnings you had?
One is inclusion, and I would say both of them, inclusion and diversity, because Canada is all about that.
Yes.
I have multicultural friends from people coming from Africa to the US, to Europeans, to even Filipinos. So that was one of the greatest learnings. The other one is not to give up. Basically, there's no school in somewhere. Well, if you want a solution, you're gonna find one. Whether it means you have to travel or to just figure it out. So basically, that was the two learnings. One is that at the end of the day, we're all human. And the other one is just not give up, keep continuing, even at a young age. You obviously need your support system. You will not be able to do it alone, but just don't give up, keep going.
Okay, so don't give up. So that's resiliency.
Correct.
All right. And let's look at your profile. You seem to have zeroed in on F&B, food and beverage. Why food and beverage and not retail?
I guess I was a hyperactive kid, and the F&B has something that none other have, and I feel it's that speed and urgency, um, and that's what attracted me into it. Every day is kind of a new challenge or a new game, if we all call it that way. It's all based on you need to take decisions fast, you need to act fast, you need to serve your guests fast to keep them happy. So it's all about remaining active and moving as we go. That's what attracted me to it. And I have to say, 20 years after, I'm still in love with it as if I was back in 2001.
Okay. Now, I have a question on F&B, your learnings in your many years in F&B. What do you think non-F&B industry participants learn from the food and beverage industry?
In every industry, to reach a goal, you're going to need teamwork, but I think it's more emphasized in the F&B business, especially in the kinds of concepts I work with, because it's not a one-man show. Whether it was at Tim Hortons or Popeyes or now Domino's, it's 3 or 4 or even more people, and we can go up to 60 people running a shift. It's making sure everybody is working towards a common goal. I think that it's something the F&B gave out to other retailers. There's obviously when you go to, let's say, I don't know, I'll take an example, SM Superstore, there's a lot of people working there, but some of them can do their job independently. In the F&B business, there's no such a thing. It's really a synergy. Everything is dependent on what the other person is going to do. So I think teamwork in the F&B business is basically as if you're practicing any sport.
Okay, teamwork. Okay. Now, your journey took you all over the place, all over the globe, but it brought you to Manila to open Popeyes. Okay. If I'm not mistaken, Popeyes was here much earlier, then left and came back, correct?
Yes, it was the same group. So basically, Tim Hortons and Popeyes belong to the same principal in the US.
Yes.
It's Restaurants Brands International, one of the major F&B global powerhouses. So they're part of the same company. So yes, I did work for them. I left for a while to take on another challenge, and I came back to it.
Okay. When you were brought to the Philippines, okay, this is pre-COVID, right?
Correct. That was in well, I was introduced to the Philippines in 2012 when I started coming here for hiring trips.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. You were. Yes.
Yeah, and then I came to work here and relocated permanently in 2015. Sorry, end of 2015.
How would you on in pre-COVID times, how would you describe the Philippine retail F&B industry? What were the
Busy,
challenges? Okay.
busy. It was, I mean, Canada is a big country, right? But it's not as populated as the Philippines. Even when I was in the Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and Dubai, they're not as populated as here. So I was actually amazed how much people there was. I mean, obviously it's going to lead to traffic, but I'm very comfortable in traffic. That was never an issue for me. But how busy everything was, and even if you keep expanding, there's room for more. So I think the fact that the society is heavily dependent. I think I was reading the last statistics, like 76% of the GDP of the Philippines is based on consumption. So that's huge for the retail industry. It's pretty impressive.
Okay. Most all of your brands are multinational brands. Okay. So what are the learnings you have from dealing with um, multicultural workforces? Okay. What are the key learnings there?
Uh, One is, and which is the most important, is you need to understand each person. You cannot generalize, and that I've noticed that as soon as I was asked to go in the Gulf countries where I landed in Dubai and Saudi Arabia, and on my team there was actually no nationals from that country. I had people from the Philippines, I had people from Nepal, people from India, from Egypt. And that was something new for me because I've been operating in Canada for the longest time. Although we have diversity and inclusion in Canada, uh, it's not people coming fresh off from their own country where you have to assimilate them to the local cultures and all that. And it was the same for me. I was coming from Canada. I needed to understand the local uh, behaviors as well of people. So I think the biggest learning is to make sure you spend 5, 10 minutes, have a coffee with somebody, so you can find common grounds. Usually around the table when you're eating or when you're listening to music, people are more relaxed and tend to share more about themselves. And those were things that we used to do. I recall we used to have like a survey every morning. What's your favorite song for today and why? And we would ask the members of the team to each answer and let us know. So that way it was for everybody to understand a bit about that person. Because usually when you like a song, it means something special for you. And when you open up about it, it allows the others to understand where you're coming from, what's your goal, what you want to do. So that type of environment helped me become a better leader because I could not anymore just have my own point of view and drive uh, people around. It became the opposite. It became let's gather everybody and decide where we want to go as a team. And I had to involve them, understand from them. Some had strength or weaknesses, but all that melting pot together, when you get them to work as a team and forget their backgrounds, there will always be incidents. But if you remove those exceptions, it just allows you to really feel good about what you're doing and and see how they're progressing as well. I mean, I had people that didn't even speak a word in English, and then after 2 years, they were completely fluent. And whether they earned a salary or not, that's important. They were able to help their families back home. But learning a new language as well and having that ability of communicating with other ones, it's just priceless.
Okay. So the inclusion and diversity that you had in Canada helped you as you move from one region to another. And,
Yes, because I didn't go there with having prejudice. I landed,
okay, that's a good one.
yeah, I arrived from a country where we don't have those, whether it's racist remarks and all of that. So it didn't exist in Canada. And it's part of the civic duty of, I guess, the schools and the government to go beyond that. Even me, I was an immigrant in Canada and I didn't feel it at all. So when I arrived in other countries, not having that prejudice, I was automatically open to hearing them out and see what they have. So that helped me a lot. I didn't need to break that barrier where, oh, this person is not good. Automatically, everybody was good to me.
And you've taken that now that you're working with 100% Filipino workforce.
Yes, yes. I mean, yeah, the difference here, it was easier for me because most of them speak English already. So we didn't have that barrier. So that made it much easier for me. But obviously, I mean, the Filipino hospitality is renowned worldwide. So I landed here, whether I was my wife was Filipino or not, it had nothing to do. Everybody had welcoming, open arms, and um, so I mean, it's just it made sense. I think I was destined to end up here. That's how I see it.
Yes, destined. Okay. Now, how would you describe the Filipino as a worker?
Um, I've had the chance to work with very talented and extremely skilled workers, uh, and they don't have anything to envy to anywhere else. And I've also had the chance of recruiting people that was their first job. Um, I think the one uh, the one concern I had initially, and I still do have,
Yes.
and I try to coach my team, is overall they don't like conflict and they're non-confrontational people.
Okay.
So that is something where wherever I go, I tend to let the team know that the door is always open. Your comment or feedback is as valued as anybody else here, whether it's me or a simple cashier. Your comment is valued as long as it's sent across respectfully. You should speak up, and this is something I'm still struggling with today. After working 6 years here, there's still a lot of our new hires that look at me and they find me weird initially because I'm talking to regular, like everybody on the team. And I tell them, guys, with us, there's no hierarchy. We're all part of one team. I expect you to challenge me the same way I will be challenging you. So please learn to speak up and don't worry about being confrontational because we have to learn how we will agree together on disagreements.
That's a very interesting style when you're asking even juniors to talk to you. And you know how it is. Can be very hierarchical. There's a
Uh,
hierarchy.
yeah,
So
CJ, you're absolutely right. But I think that's part of the success as well because I learned from them in 2 hours in the restaurant more that I could learn spending 2, 3 days looking at reports in the head office.
let's
And
go.
and that's why I always call them the heroes of the business. They are the heroes of the business. They probably know and have the answers to questions that we're asking. You just need to ask them the question directly to them and not go through 10,000 people. Go down on the ground, spend time with them, understand their challenges, and ask them the questions. Chances are you will get the answer
How often are you on ground?
at least 2 days a week, as much as I can.
So
At
when
least.
you 2 days a week, you're on the floor, walking with your team, talking to customers. I mean, it's a kind of it's
Yeah,
a very
I
interesting practice.
yeah, I'm regularly every Saturday for me is in the stores, and usually I take 2 afternoons to go around, whether it's my own team or I go check out the competition. But um, sometimes if I can't do it because of whatever
Yeah.
meetings or I'll try to make up for it. But I cannot disconnect from the floor for too long because then you lose the edge.
Okay. Now we finished the cultural side. Let's talk about the generational side. Okay, so I'm a baby boomer. You were born in 1980, so you're a Gen Xer, right?
Yeah.
And then you have started, of course, the millennials are already in the workforce because they're the 30 somethings and early 20s. But you also have the Gen Z, which is like your fresh college graduates. And if I'm not mistaken, you do high school, college students also part time.
Correct. Correct.
have you learned working with 3 or 4 generations with different points of view?
A lot. I could spend actually a full week telling you what I have learned, but there's one thing all of them have in common, and I think that's across the board in any generation. It's the feeling of security. They want to be safe and stable,
Okay.
and that's across all generations. And when I say security, it doesn't mean that they need 2, 3 bodyguards. They need to be safe in an environment where they know that whatever they do a mistake or not, they're not gonna get let go or they're not gonna get scolded. So that's sense of safety. I think I've been reading a few books, and um, Tony Robbins mentions it many times in his webinars as well. Our brain is wired to safety. Our brain wants our body to be safe. So that's why sometimes people remain in their comfort zone because that's where they feel safe. And if I bring it back to the generations, as long as you're able to have them work around one common goal and provide them that safety, I don't think you're going to have an issue. I take my examples sometimes. I attend Mass on Sundays and I see people from several generations, but I've never seen many conflicts at Mass because I think we're there, we feel safe, and then we have one common goal. We're going there to, whether it's pray or to be one with God, or however you want to take a look at it. But if you can take that and apply it at your work where you give them one common goal and try to have them all feel safe, I think it's a recipe for success. So far, I do have conflicts, but nothing that cannot be handled. Everybody is entitled to his own opinion, but everybody should listen as well what the other has to say. And I always tell my teams, you have a responsibility towards your team. You can fail yourself if you want. That's up to you. And we will never judge you upon it. But you're not entitled to be the reason your team fails. So if you want to do it that way, or if you don't care about it, come forward with it and let us know you're not interested to play in that team any longer. And we're going to work with you. We're going to see if we can find you a replacement or if we can put you in a position where you'll feel better part of the team. And that's the way I was able to have everybody work in one direction, whether it's removing the unwanted culprit, if we can call it that way, or it's hiring people that align towards the common goal, which is we have to protect the brand. I mean, we're salaried at the end of the day, and we're not asking anyone to volunteer. So we owe that to our stakeholders and our employers. We owe them that much respect. At least they're paying our salary.
There are 2 things that come into my mind for that portion of the conversation. Number 1, comfort zone. Okay, safety and comfort zone, but isn't comfort zone also a hindrance to innovation?
It is, definitely it is. Look, for me, I've never been in my comfort zone for too much. Matter of fact, I could stay in the office, and if I'm in the office, I'm comfortable and all that. But I make it a mandate. But see, CJ, it's probably a difference between somebody that has ambitions and somebody that doesn't. There's no right or wrong. There's absolutely no right or wrong. If you take my brother now in Canada, he's comfortable from his 9 to 6 p.m. and he goes home, he has his weekends, he's very happy with that. If you give me that role, I'll probably last 2, 3 weeks and I'll have to go back to the retail industry and the F&B. So we come from the same parents. I mean, we're blood related. So there's no right or wrong. The difference is if you push yourself out of your comfort zone, this is where you see the world differently. This is where you can gain extra knowledge. This is where you can grow differently. But it's entirely up to you. I will never force someone. If they're comfortable doing their 9 to 5, well, so be it. We need people like that.
Okay.
And others that want to drive, we're going to give them the tools to be able to drive and grow. So you need to find the balance. There's absolutely no right or wrong. I will never judge anyone based on that. As a matter of fact, on the hire date, I always ask that question during my interview process. What is your dream professionally? I want to see where that person wants to land. And if that person tells me I want to replace you 2, 3 years from now, I'll give them all the tools possible to reach it.
I noticed you have a lot of empowerment. That seems to be, you didn't say the word, but that's what I'm picking up. You empower your people.
I do. Look, I was a cashier 20 years ago.
Okay.
And I got lucky. I had people that wanted me to grow. So it's my way of paying back. If I was able to make it, everybody can make it. I have nothing extraordinary. All I do is probably I just don't give up, and that's about it. So I do empower a lot, but with empowerment comes responsibility and accountability. And
Okay.
some people want one but not the latter. So you have to balance that as well. See, if you want empowerment, definitely I'll give you as much as you want. But when you take a decision, you have an accountability that comes with it. And if you take a very big risk and it doesn't work out well, you need to accept what comes with it. And if you take a risk that pays well, you need also to accept that you're going to get probably bona fide or so. And all of these, I'm extremely transparent. I explain them to everybody. You want to grow, we're going to give you the tools, we're going to empower you. But don't forget that you have the responsibilities that come with it.
That's true. With empowerment is responsibility, and accountability. Very
Exactly.
okay. The pandemic has hit us. It's still around. It's been 20, almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Let's start off first with how did the pandemic affect you personally?
Um, it took a I was affected personally, specifically with my kids. I have 3 young kids. Um, and if I just was alone, a bachelor, since I was in the F&B industry, I had all my permits. I was able to travel. We never stopped a day. But where I got affected is when I started seeing my kids at home. At some point, I was even suspecting that they were into depression, and I started seeking help from whether it's somebody in psychology or friends that would understand that. And um, this scared me, to be very fair. It scared me a bit. You never want to see a 6 or an 8-year-old into that type of depression. I mean, it's the years where they're supposed to be running around and fighting with each other and falling and scratching themselves and learning. And all of a sudden, you put them in a house. Actually, we took the decision, me and my wife, to go further out of Manila um, to get a bigger house so they could at least enjoy a bit of sun and run because we used to live in an apartment and it was becoming too much. So that's how it affected me. I would say we had to move and all of this, but I mean there was nothing else I could do. We tried to find classes online. We tried to find. My son is very interested in coding. We tried to register them online for coding, but it's not the same as if they're playing basketball outside or practicing martial arts or going to see their friends or using the bike and stuff like that. So that was, I think the kids got it more difficult than we did. And we might not feel the effect today, but maybe in 10 years or 20 years down the road, the generation that spent those 2 years, and I feel the 6 to 10 years old are critical for their development. That generation that spent those 2 years in quarantine, we need to seriously stop and think about that for their future because I've experienced it with my kids.
How about you? Did you end up, so you were able to take care of your kids by bringing them to a place where they will be able to run and have a more normal life? But in your case, did you also were you able to, let's say, follow your passions on cooking, gardening? Did you take any of those activities?
I
Social
had to I had to replace some of them to be very fair. Uh, I have a dear friend of mine. His name is Anton Dator. He introduced me to bonsai making.
Oh,
So
what's that?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I started that as well. I had to change a bit our style. But to be fair, I grew up in a conflictual environment in
Yeah.
Lebanon where it feels a bit like a pandemic. So I was used to it, and we still find those moments to enjoy, right? You have to make your own happiness. So we still found ways of cooking, playing games. I mean, we've discovered a few board games with friends of ours that we were able to play. With my family in Canada, we managed to have some Zoom dinners or breakfast for them at the other side of the plant. So
Yeah.
we managed to find ways, but to be fair, I've never thought it was gonna last 2 years.
Okay. What about your companies that you were managing? What was the impact of the pandemic on them?
Uh, I mean, in terms of revenues, definitely we lost almost 50, 60% before we could recover in terms of revenues. But I am proud to say in both groups I've worked with, we had not had to let go anyone. We just had to manage to reduce the hours, but keep everybody employed. So this is something we are extremely proud of, whether at the QAJ group with Popeyes or here at Domino's. I think my predecessor made an amazing job. Actually, you've managed to interview Roy at the time, and he did an amazing job with that. We just reduced the hours. Um, we got lucky as well. I have to say, our store base was fairly little compared to the big giants like the Yellow Arches and the Red Bee, if we can call
Yes.
it. They probably felt it more than I did because their store base is just incredibly big. So for them, it must have been more difficult. But I got lucky. We were blessed. We had a very small store base. We managed to save all of them and all of the employees. So we just needed to reinvent ourselves. Obviously, follow the IATF, the some innovations that we did where the safety measures were completely enhanced. We didn't take any risk. Uh, we managed to also implement a kind of an alternating schedule where we have a team A on Monday, but team B on Tuesday. So in case something happens to team A, we just go in, clean the store. We ask them to quarantine for 14 days. It doesn't affect team B. We
Right.
can still operate. So we had to innovate, become creative, learn some best practices from other markets, and especially because we're part of bigger franchises, that helped us as well. But overall, today, as we speak, I'm happy reporting that we're almost back to pre-pandemic level for 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 the brand I'm working with for Domino's right now, and we're actually aggressively expanding. We managed to open 17 new locations last year, so we have plans for much more than that this year. And at the end of the day, if you look at the macroeconomic indicators of the Philippines, they're still in a good place. The currency remains stable. The debt, yes, the national debt might have increased, but on a personal level, debt ratio remained it's probably one of the strongest in Southeast Asia. Unemployment rate took a hit, but it's still a very commendable unemployment rate if you look across Southeast Asia, and we have the second biggest population. So overall, the government, the LGUs, every task force that intervened, um, I believe we did well. Could we have done better?
Yeah.
Always, yes. But I look at it today, I think we came out very well. Well, we're not out yet, but we're almost there. We kind of survived well the pandemic.
So okay. Talk about innovation. So what were the what were the best lessons that you learned from the pandemic? I mean, we know the suffering that came with the pandemic, but every crisis has opportunities, it also has lessons. So maybe please expound on those lessons and opportunities arising from the pandemic.
Yes, definitely. I mean, the one of the major opportunities, and I have to thank all the lessons in the greater Metro Manila is They were all extremely helpful to all retailers by giving rental concessions, which allowed everybody to survive. And
Yes.
that's something um, I have to tip my hat off, because without that, I don't think many of us would have survived. And that created opportunities, especially at the time when I was with Popeyes. We were able to secure some prime locations because they were vacated by someone else, and that's an opportunity. We at the time we opened a few locations as well, so we created employment for people. Uh, uh, Again, the changes is that you have to adapt. You have to make sure everything is safe. Uh, Things work slower than usual. There's the global supply chain issue that happened
Yes.
as well, where we had to work around it. But luckily, our plan since the beginning was to localize most of the materials, whether it was at the time I was working with Popeyes or today at Domino's. I'm very proud to say that most of it is local as well. So that helped us get across. And ultimately, the biggest learning I could say today is to have clarity. And you look at your stakeholders, whether it's your employees first, your customers, your partners, uh, the media, your competitors, the suppliers, all of these, you look at them and you analyze the situation. And if you have clarity and if it's very clear in your mind, the decision that you're going to take, and then you cascade it to all of these stakeholders, there is no reason for it not to succeed unless there's something that was completely unforeseen. And this is exactly what we did. We took the list of all stakeholders and we took it from their point of view to understand what's in it for them or what's their concerns. And we managed to answer all those answers. And then we went back to them and we had a very clear message across the board. And again, if it's clear in your mind, you can cascade the information clearly.
Yes.
People feel more comfortable, they're reassured. It goes back to safety. They want to feel safe and they want to feel secure. And if that's the message you're able to project and work upon, I feel that's how we were able to get out of it.
Okay. Clarity. That's very a great learning from this pandemic. It will help you navigate to the post-pandemic scenario. And I also noticed the partnerships that will
Yeah.
also help. Now, in your career, I have seen that you have worked with public traded corporations, but you also work with family corporations as a professional manager. Our audience in the Philippine Retailers Association, there are a lot of family corporations. And as we face the pandemic, do you think, my first question will be, do you think the second and the third generation should immediately dive into the business, or should they pursue other things first and come back?
Personally, and some people might not like to hear this,
It's
I,
okay.
I believe that the most qualified person should have the role, whether it's a family member or whether it's an external member. The most qualified person should have the role, unless the ownership decides that they're willing to accept losses because of the learning curve, time delays because of the learning curve, and all of this. So there is a big learning curve that someone would have to undergo if they're new in that role. Unlike I'll take my example. You take me and you ask me to run any F&B restaurant. I've been learning for 20 years how to do that. So I will jump in and by next week, I'm already 100% efficient for you. As long as, well, okay, I might not be modest enough, 90% efficient for you. But then you take someone that has never fried a chicken and you put them in that store, as good as they want to do and as passionate as they are, right, and as committed as they are, there's just simply not enough time to learn that week to become as efficient as me during that same span. So this is where I feel family-run businesses need to look at that. If they're willing to accept the learning curve, which most of them are, then it's fine. I have nothing to say. But be clear with the surrounding members, because then it might lead to frustrations. It might lead to people being disappointed. I'm more qualified than that person. Why should I? So be clear with everybody and send the message. And I've been in positions when I had to do that. And I was very glad to do it because they were upfront with me and telling me, look, we're training him for that role. So that's very fine. We're understanding. Everybody's an understanding person as long as you send the message properly. So that's what I would have to say for this. If you're willing to accept the learning curve with all that comes with it, losses in revenues and mistakes, and or the opposite, right? It's up to you at the end of the day. If not, if you're more a commercial person and you want to have predictability in your business, go with somebody that's qualified for it.
And that is a professional manager.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you get, okay, so they said, okay, we don't like the learning curve. We want to bring in a professional manager. What comes with that? What are the changes in mindset that the family, the founders or the owners have to take once a professional manager comes in?
It's tough to do, but they have to let go. They have to let go. It's very tough to do, but after that, if you're very clear on the outcome that you're expecting, if you're very clear on the KPIs, and if you're very clear on every procedure that you want, you kind of have to give the keys to that person and tell him drive the bus. If you know that that person has a license to drive the bus, if you know that person has been driving a bus for 15, 20 years, if you know that that person has a very clean record, never had an accident with the bus, if you know that this person was able to onboard and offload X amount of passengers very safely, and you're convinced of that, why would you give him the key, right? And then just tell him, oh, speed up right now, press the brakes right now, wait up right now. You need to let him drive. As long as you give him the final destination, it's up to him to go there. And you give him the timeline. If you tell him, I want you to go from Alabama to BGC in, I don't know, 20 minutes, and that person starts traveling on SLEX all the way to Cavite, well, then you know there's a mistake. But if you see him taking, I don't know, NLEX and then C5 going the right way, let him drive. It's you're paying that person for that. If not, just let him go and get somebody that will just be your messenger.
Letting go seems to be a hard thing to do for owners and founders. Is that your observation?
It is, and I put myself in their shoes. See, I have young kids again. I take that example. The day that Sean is going to tell me I'm leaving home, it's going to be tough for me to let him go the first 2, 3 weeks. But I need to make an effort for his own good, because the more I leave him at home, the less I get him exposed to the real world, and the less he becomes his own person. So it is tough, but if there's an understanding at the end of the day, I think there should be an alignment. And if they feel comfortable with that person, they need to do it. It's like any parent that has to let their kids go at some point in time.
Okay. So letting go is the most important lesson to learn.
Should be. I say that, and I've been lucky. I've worked with some extremely understanding people here locally as well, and that's one of the reasons I was able to deliver as much value as they've asked me to do.
Let's talk to the professional managers out there. Sorry. What's your advice to them? They're in multinationals and they want to make a career shift. What's your advice to them to look at family-owned corporations? Because those are good opportunities to be able to do something to make marks.
See, in everything I'm gonna do, I like to do my homework. So my advice is do your homework. Research the family business, research the person, research your direct report, research your line report, and make sure it ties up to your own expectations and your own dreams. Let's say, example, for me, I'm looking to grow and I'm looking to become president of a company. Um, and then I see an opportunity out there, but the president is very young. He's been in place for just less than a year. Well, if I do my research properly and I know that person is there to stay, but my dreams are to become president in the next 2, 3 years, I would be foolish to accept that role because first, it's going to make me unhappy. It's going to create tension. I'm not going to be able to deliver what is expected from me, and it's going to end up badly. So don't just look at the money or the compensation. Take a holistic view of it and research. Do your homework. Make sure it fits your expectations. I was young 20 years ago, and I made those decisions on a fly. I saw a lot of money. Let's take it. I didn't last. So today, I I am very selective in the projects I undergo, and it's not because I'm financially stable and I'm happy. No, it has nothing to do with that. It's because there's a lot of my own energy at home that I take from work, and if I'm happy at work, I'm a different man at home. And whether it's good or bad, this is I know my personality, I know my body, and this is who I am. So, for the good sake of our family, I decided to just onboard projects that excite me and that will lead me to my end goal. And I did my homework. So you've mentioned that I've recently joined Domino's. I did a lot of homework before joining Domino's. It wasn't a simple decision. I was extremely happy where I was. It's just that this brings me a step closer to what I would like to achieve.
I like that advice, Rami, because the pandemic also made a lot of people realize what makes them happy, what sparks joy, as Marie Kondo would say. And that includes not only their personal life, but their professional life as well. Like in the US, there's a mass resignation because people are starting to look at options. And that's another opportunity for corporate people. They can move on to different industries and different corporate setups. So that's your advice has been about what makes you happy. Research is very relevant. Okay.
Yeah.
Last two questions. Okay. The first one, what is your outlook for 2022?
Very positive. I've mentioned briefly the indicators for the Philippines, and I'm talking specifically for the Philippines. I think we're in a resurgence. The fact that there's an election year, there
Yes.
will be a stimulus that will be sent in the economy that will help. I think also the fact that we've spent 2 Christmases where we didn't feel it's a Christmas, right? And we're in the Philippines as Christmas starts in September. I think this year, if it continues that way, we're probably going to enjoy a real Christmas after all. So that's another stimulation. Um, the currency is very stable. The retail law of the Philippines is being modified, and that will be very advantageous for foreign investors. So all of this has been done with the help of PRA, I'm sure, and the government to enable foreign investment. So all of this put together, and the fact that I mean we're allies to both two powerhouses, the US and China. So I don't foresee any blockage or anything. I think it's going to be a very promising year. Uh, and those are based on data. I didn't wake up this morning and I decided to send a positive message to everybody. Yes, we have to be careful. I think, or I've read a bit that there might be some sanctions imposed around social media and stuff like that, but that should not affect the retail business. Online is gonna remain strong, I think. But the fact that it's opening up, even today there was traffic for me coming here. All of this is very encouraging. By tomorrow, no, sorry, in 2 days, we're gonna be allowing foreign travelers with no quarantine. I'm not expecting a bunch of tourists to land for the simple fact because when they go back home, they still might have to quarantine. But when all of this is lifted, they're going to be able to freely travel. And I believe it's about time. 2 years was I think it was probably meant to be to show us how resilient we are and how dependent we were from some maybe bad habits. But as I look at it today, with all the macro indicators of the country, even inflation rate has been very stable and well managed by BSP. So we're in a good situation. I think the retail of the Philippines is strong. It was able to weather the pandemic. It was able to weather the global crisis of 2008 and 2009. And from each crisis, we always see a recovery. Um, I would say maybe my sector, the F&B, is going to recover faster. Uh, the the consumables will recover faster as well. Clothing might take a bit more time to recover, and the durables might take a bit more time. But uh, from the past, if you look at the curves of the past global crisis, the durable sector was usually the last one to recover, and by that I mean buying cars and maybe. But so far, we're still seeing a good movement in that. So I believe we're almost there. It's pretty encouraging.
Okay, my last question is, will online replace brick and mortar or offline in the Philippines?
I don't think it will. I don't think it will ever happen in the Philippines. Well, ever. I should be very careful on what I'm saying, but not in a market like the Philippines, simply because you finish work at 6 p.m. There's so much traffic outside. You're gonna probably go grab lunch before you take the road. So you still need a place to sit down. You still need a mall to go for the air conditioning. It will force them to revise the way of doing things,
Okay.
but I do not think it's gonna disappear. It's as a matter of fact, I mean, we've been opening brick and mortar stores, and we're a delivery concept, and it has been doing well. We opened recently, 3 weeks ago, and it has been doing well. I think we just need to offer and adapt to the digital world. Example, offering Gcash and PayMy and all that. But we're still in a country where there's only 30 or 40% of the population that is literate to banking. The rest of them are still on cash. So it's gonna take time to change that movement to entire digitalization. So online is still gonna grow. The network of the system, the entire infrastructure of the Philippines is improving, uh, but we're still probably maybe 3 or 4 years behind countries like Vietnam and maybe even more behind countries like China. So we will still enjoy the brick and mortar.
Okay, I said it's going to be a last question, but I just realized I forgot to ask you, how would you describe the pandemic evolved Filipino shopper, Filipino diner?
Uh, See, for the diner, the shopper, I wouldn't be qualified to be able to give you a proper answer. But for the diner,
yes,
for the diner, we have noticed that they're looking for value, and not specifically when I mean value, not for cheap. They're looking, if you have a family meal that is gonna feed my entire family at X price, I am willing to pay for it. And it raised the average check across the industry. Uh, um, and that was not just due because you have the delivery fees and you have tiered pricing. It was really based on, and we got some studies done. It was really, when I was still in my previous company, we have some studies done. It was really based on the fact that you're at home right now. You, whether you want to cook or not, if you want to order something, you have to order for the entire family one shot. So you look for values. Whoever has family meals, whether it's QSR, casual dining, and all of that, it's forcing people to just look for that value. And if you end up being uh, uh, in the F&B sector where you're a bit more premium, it doesn't mean you're not going to work. It just means that you're limiting yourself to a certain area of the population where it might work in CBDs. But then if you go open more provincial, you might not be as successful, and then therefore you're gonna slow your scaling up. So it depends really what the business is into. But I feel that's what happened. It's really people shifting to look for value. If you have a compelling value offering, whether it's 1,000 pesos or a 500 or 1,500, as long as it feeds X amount of people and they see value in it, people are going for it.
All right, value. Okay.
Yeah.
And an optimistic view of 2022.
I hope, I pray for it. I sincerely pray for it. We need to have a nice Christmas.
And we're with you on that one. Hey, Rami, I just found out you just won Asia Leaders Top 50 Rising Tigers in Asia Pacific. And just in time for the Year of the Tiger, for the awarding ceremony this coming month. Okay, what made you win this? What do you think made you win this award?
Without any doubt, the people that I had the chance to work with, my support system, starting with my wonderful wife, Flor, my parents, the entire team at Kuya J, whether we're talking about Bon, Anton, Don, everybody. I can't name them, it's going to take too much time. And even my close friends, they were extremely supportive. I can't mention all of them, but I'm thinking about Areen, Abby, Jesus. There's a lot of people that should be out there, not me. I cannot dedicate it to them, but I believe that they are the reasons I'm up there. It's not me. And I have to also mention, I got lucky to onboard here Domino's, and I think your previous guest Roy did a
Yes.
wonderful job setting it up. So I have to tip my hat off to him as well. He did some wonderful things. I just happened to come here, and I don't want to collect his credit. It's all his.
All right, congratulations again to be included in one of Asia's leaders top 50 rising tigers. Yes, inspiration and teamwork makes the dream work. Correct, Rami?
Yes, absolutely. There's no other way.
Thank you, Rami. That was a fun and insightful conversation. And thank you also for taking time to be with us in Let's Talk Retail. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of Let's Talk Retail. That was Rami Chahwan, the president and member of the board of Dominos Philippines. So please don't forget to click on our YouTube channel, subscribe. We're also on Spotify, so you can get your latest dose of Let's Talk Retail. This is CJ Hassan of the Shangri-La Plaza, wishing all of you a good day. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next episode.